Hello and welcome back to the Faces of Melrose Real Estate. My name is Jean McAndrews and today's show features Christine Rocha of RE/MAX Leading Edge, Lou Izzi of the law firm of Bell & Izzi, and Chris Cowher of Patriot Community Bank. Our theme for today's show is historic homes in Melrose, and our guest speaker is Linda Okanowski, who is broker, owner, and co-CEO of RE/MAX Leading Edge and Melrose's Victorian home expert. We are also featuring Mike Coleman, who is a Melrose resident and architect, with Ron Rocha of Rocha Realty Group. They will be doing a running tour of 10 historic homes in 10 minutes in Melrose.
Hello, I'm Lou Izzi, a partner in the law firm of Bell & Izzi. Welcome back to Faces of Melrose Real Estate. During the course of this episode, you've learned or will learn many interesting facts about the wonderful and various architectural features of homes in our region, particularly of those here in Melrose, where we have a terrific and diverse stock of homes boasting tremendous architecture, most notably those of the Victorian era in style. For many, the prospect of owning an older Victorian home is understandably quite appealing. For the next few minutes, we'll discuss a few issues to bear in mind for those of you that are looking to own, in my opinion, a wonderful part of history. Although it's certainly true that not everyone wants to live in a Victorian home, what's not to like about those architectural features, such as bay windows, dentil moldings, cornices, and mansard roofs? Victorian homes, those that were constructed during the reign of England's Queen Victoria, are elaborate in their detail and grand in their appearance. Of course, by the very nature of the architecture and the period during which they were constructed, these homes were certainly well built and are now, of course, quite old. As with anything, whether constructed in 1897 or 1997, the initial quality of construction is important, but the attention and care afforded to these homes throughout the decades is of equal, if not more, importance. In previous segments, we've discussed the importance of buyers performing their due diligence in the home buying process. It is, after all, for most people, the single largest investment of their lives, and as such, proper care and attention to detail must be taken. I recognize that in markets where the housing inventory is low and competition is fierce, there may be a sense of urgency when trying to get one's offer accepted. But I urge you, buyers, when confronted with that type of situation, to resist the temptation to sacrifice sound practices. There are certainly ways to make your offers as attractive as possible without compromising your standards and taking unnecessary risk. When looking to purchase an older home, perhaps a Victorian like we've discussed, the various professional inspections that we encourage for all buyers are quite literally a requirement. Professional home, pest, and if necessary engineering inspections will assist potential buyers of older homes in determining the true condition of that grand old lady behind the recently applied paint and other cosmetics. Obviously, those interested in buying an older home do so, or should, with the recognition that there will be issues ranging from deferred maintenance to aged mechanical and other systems, to everything in between. Experienced inspectors will take this into consideration and should be able to provide information regarding the current condition, but also comment on the visible quality of past maintenance, repairs, and improvements. In many cases, perhaps in most cases, older homes settle for a period of time after construction. An experienced home inspector should be able to provide potential buyers with enough information to determine whether there is a need to seek the opinion of a structural engineer in order to determine the nature of the issue and whether in fact there is something that requires attention. In addition, when looking to buy that wonderful Victorian or other style older home, care should be taken in order to determine whether the same is designated as a historic home with any of the national, state, or local registers of historic places. If a particular historical event took place within the home, or if a person of particular historical importance once resided in that home, steps may have been taken to recognize and register that home. Melrose is fortunate to boast many such registered homes and other buildings, and while it is certainly wonderful to own a true landmark, for some individuals the benefits can sometimes be outweighed by potential drawbacks. This may be true for individual homeowners as well as those who find that they own within a particular designated area. For instance, Melrose has an historic district which encompasses either side of Main Street and spans the length of Main Street through most of the business district up to Elk Pond. As such, any contemplated work to the exterior of buildings within that district must be approved by our Historic District Commission. Understandably, those who serve on the commission are keenly interested in responsible for the preservation of the historical look and feel of the buildings within that district. They serve an important role in our community and help to preserve that which makes us unique. As with any type of work which seeks to replicate the architectural qualities of the original, the costs associated with the same can be somewhat higher than those for similar projects that are performed upon homes that don't possess the architectural intricacies of, for instance, a Victorian home. And add to that the necessity to seek approval from a historic commission, there can certainly be additional time and expense associated with any repair or project. All that being said, those that have a desire to purchase an older home, perhaps that of the Victorian era, the benefits to owning a home with the charm and character of that nature far outweigh most potential drawbacks. I thank you once again for tuning in to Faces of Melrose Real Estate. I hope that you found this information somewhat informative, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Back in 1950, Life magazine actually named Melrose the Victorian City. We're here today with Linda to talk about Victorian homes and Melrose. So Linda, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's fun.
We'd like to start off. Obviously, this is kind of informational as well. So why don't we just get right into as far as what is a Victorian home?
They're so often misidentified. Even in real estate, sadly,
Yes.
people don't know they have these great architecture. But Victorians are predominantly late 19th century homes, 1950 on, or when Queen Victoria reigned in England,
Okay.
Which went to 1901. And so you've got this amazing architecture that was built in Melrose in very different kinds. So there's lots of different kinds of Victorian homes.
Okay.
So it's not, one size fits all. Early on we had the mansards and the Italianates. Those are paired windows and beautiful brackets and some bay windows. It started to get a little bit more elaborate. We started to have those Queen Annes. That's where you get the turrets and all those big porches. Richardsonians were big, heavy houses, manses of a house, very, very stately properties. And there's an argument that the revivals, which are really kind of the antithesis of the Victorian because they're more symmetrical, still kind of fall into that category because they have so many shared characteristics of ceilings and light and woodwork. But again, they're more symmetrical.
Okay. So if I understand that right, then in Melrose kind of being known as the city of homes and whatnot, so is it safe to say that Melrose kind of came out during the Victorian era? I mean, was it kind of built up during that point?
So many exciting things happened, but the big thing to happen to Melrose was in 1860, the very first train that went from Boston to Portland that ever went as fast as 60 miles an hour came bolting right through Melrose.
Okay.
And that put us on the map.
Okay.
Before then, you'll see the Homestead House, the Vinton House, the Upham House.
Yes.
We really weren't a metropolis at that point.
Okay.
But the train breathed life into Melrose, and that's where our Victorians are predominantly concentrated. So think about, Wyoming Hill, our train station. Wyoming goes all the way up, all those beautiful houses up on the hill, and then on the other side of the Lincoln School, up and down West Wyoming Avenue.
Absolutely.
Some really beautiful period architecture. Go over to Cedar Park, up and down West Emerson Street, almost till you get to Bellevue Avenue,
Yes.
which is where that kind of ended there.
Okay.
And then it goes all the way up to West Emerson and then off. You've got
Okay.
Poplar Street, Prospect Street, the Cedar Park neighborhoods. Holland has gorgeous, gorgeous Victorian architecture built predominantly 1870s, 80s, and 90s.
Okay. All right, great. So people looking at homes today, I mean, Victorian might be something as far as we say walkability. You have the location and the desire to be close to downtown. So
right.
this is something that you might find quite often in the Melrose area.
Well, walkability, you go right up to the Highlands,
Yes.
the Highlands train station.
Yes.
Why do people move to Melrose? So they can walk through the train. So it's the same as it was, only
Yes.
they were summering out here in 1860s and 70s and building these houses to be in the shade and away from the city, and now people just want a good commute. You know, it's
Yes.
13 minutes,
Yes.
I think, from Wyoming Hill to North Station.
Which you can't beat.
Yeah, it can't be.
Okay. When people are coming in now and they're looking at these homes, what are some of the things they should take into consideration? Are there restrictions when it comes to any kind of work that can be done, or
If you're thinking about becoming a homeowner
Yes.
here, is big government going to interfere on
Yes.
how you take care of
Yes,
your house?
that's exactly.
We do have one very small protected historic district in Melrose,
Okay.
and it runs along Main Street from Foster all the way down to Winthrop. And it's the entire downtown district.
Okay.
It was there to preserve it. It's why our downtown is so charming.
Yes.
They weren't lopping
Yes.
off the mansard roofs that other towns were that caused ice
Thank
problems,
goodness.
right?
Yes.
The Victorian lighting and all those things were spurred up from that. But in that historic district, which runs all the way actually up and down Winthrop Street,
Okay.
and I think a lot of people aren't aware when they buy and sell houses that there are restrictions. There is a historic district commission that meets.
Okay.
And they, if you want to do anything besides paint the color of your house, they don't oversee color.
Okay.
But if you want to change the siding, add a porch, or the signage that goes part of downtown for signs,
Okay.
all businesses have to go before the Historic District Commission to have their sign approved. We did here at our office.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
they, you know, smaller, bigger size, they're paying attention to keep the integrity of that downtown district.
Okay, all right, great. Just speaking a little bit about like the Historic Society and whatnot, and what about the house tours? I know that used to be a big piece, I believe, you know,
Right.
as far as Melrose is concerned. They would do, you know, a Victorian house tour, you know, whatnot. Anything like that? You know,
Nothing
as
is
far
on the
as-
horizon,
Okay.
but it's interesting how that started.
Okay.
Back in the 1970s, I was not part of it. I would say I was still in
You were
high
still-
school.
yes,
But I have a lot of friends who started the Victorian Society. You know, that was the Cocoras, Bob Bell, lots of people who are no longer here were very, very involved because they owned these big old houses and they needed plumbers that could handle the Victorian bathrooms,
Yes,
and they needed
yes.
resources, and you know, we're coming out of this major, I think the Brady Bunch was the 1970s, you know, very different style of
yes,
building,
yes.
and they wanted people to be able to take care of their homes, and as they got together, they realized they were sitting on these majestic, beautiful pieces of property, and they really got some buzz, and you know, there were a lot of Melrose homes at the time featured in Boston Magazine, you know, on Solwoods Road, on Woodland. I can think of several that kind of kept the discussion going and really drove a new appreciation, because in the 1970s we had the oil crisis and no one wanted to heat them.
Okay.
So they were kind of dragging on the market,
Okay.
a little bit harder to sell,
Okay.
and they said, wait a minute, they're not building like this anymore. You don't have this kind of fenestration and detail and, you know, woodwork.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So they started to really kind of that contagious enthusiasm of what they had, and it helped everybody in Melrose kind of put us on the map and fellow homeowners.
Okay, all right, great. Now, before we were also talking about things like Chelsea tile, you know, the things that are really specific to a Victorian that, you know, not only here, but really across
What
the
are the
country.
goods?
Yes.
What are the goods
What
that
are the
you-
goods?
in
Yes,
a
that you
great-
find.
Chelsea tile is a great example. It was manufactured right here in Chelsea. And if you go to the Museum of Fine Arts, there's a Chelsea tile exhibit, and it's in homes throughout Melrose. But if you go to the most beautiful homes in Missouri or any place else, you know, St. Louis, or any place that showcases beautiful 19th century architecture, it's Chelsea tile. And it's so sad when I see people ripping it out
No.
to put today's marble or granite in, because it can't be replaced. Again, someone should think of it as truly museum quality if it's sitting in our backyard museum.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of other great features. You know, I think when you look at the flooring, they put hardwood floors, oak floors in everywhere.
Yes.
But they cut the wood differently so that the grain showed. It was a more expensive way to cut the tree. So you can't buy hardwood floors, I don't think. That's why they're you're going back and you know, salvaging
Yes.
floors,
Yes.
salvaging old wood. The craftsmanship that went into those homes, when you see the plaster medallions, there are some homes in Melrose that still have all the plaster lincrusta all around towards the ceiling. And of course, they still have the places for to hang your pictures.
Yes, I
you know,
love
because you
that.
can never
Yes,
put a
'cause you
nail
can't put a
in.
nail in the wall.
Right, you know.
Yes.
So they have all the picture molding.
Okay.
That's what it's for, picture molding on top of that. You've got beautiful, beautiful newel posts. I think there was a set of really great woodworkers, craftsmen, and you could see the different styles. People had different balustrades.
Yes.
You could see, you'll go in a house going, I just saw a new post like that across town. You know, the same woodworker was there. Gorgeous, finials on things. The woodwork around the fireplace, beyond the Chelsea tile, and all the carvings that would have come in. High ceilings. Light was really important. You have to remember that when these houses were built, there was no electricity. So there was no central air. We had to build houses with lots of windows so we could vent it so you didn't suffocate inside the house. And for light.
And for lighting.
So there's windows
Exactly.
in closets. There's windows that go from hallways into bedrooms because that was their light source. So these houses are really built to live in well and very thoughtfully, and they had money. Even though you and I were also talking about how they cheaped out sometimes. And,
Yes.
like you could save, I read somewhere it was about $2 if you put pine board where you were going to put your Oriental rug.
Yes, I know. It's amazing when you pull it up and you see that still. In
So we
houses
just
that
keep rugs there now.
Yeah, it's easy.
You can't replace it. So very special. They don't build it like that anymore. And that's what makes it so, it's a treasure. So we're caretakers of these beautiful homes. And so that would be the, real positive parts of owning an older home.
Okay, all right. Good segue. So when it comes to owning an older home, positives versus negatives,
Yeah.
what are some of the things people should watch out for?
Well, there was a slideshow done in the 1970s. I cannot find it. It's someone's basement in town. It's called Lost Melrose.
Okay.
And I think Ainsley Donaldson put it together years ago. And what she did was she found old historic pictures of some of those beautiful houses in Melrose and what they looked like today. Like the Sewell Estate, which you can't even see because they built all around it back on Solwoods Road. And now it's a big box with some bay windows, but all the porches and all of the beautiful rails are gone. All of the brackets are gone. And here was this spectacular property, and it looks like a big brown box now.
Oh.
And that happened up and down, Franklin Street,
Yes.
Wyoming Avenue. So some houses that look, that have lost their grandeur, but it's because the wood was not maintained. And so when you own these old houses, it's not just about what color you paint them, we should talk
Yes.
about that, but it's also about, paint protects these houses. So when you own these houses, the wood is very
maintenance,
vulnerable
yes.
to water, and it's so expensive to replace, it doesn't get replaced, or the porch shrinks. People
Yes.
build a small porch where there
Yes.
was a big,
A grand.
huge porch. And that's unfortunate, but it's the reality of our economy.
Kind of reminds me almost before and after, but in the opposite. The before, the whole grand, and then the after, like you said, with some.
We've worked backwards.
We've worked backwards with some,
But
yes.
I think money's coming in, and as you and I both know,
Yes.
real estate, this is the hottest market in Massachusetts. We're up 19%. No other town can say that. And as that news gets out, you're going to draw more people with money who will start to
Who
come
will
in
start to- yes.
and rebuild porches
Yes.
and add those touches and features that really bring back that yesteryear grandeur.
Now, what if, that's an interesting point too, what if somebody did want to go back, and I know you said there was a slideshow somewhere, but really what if somebody wanted to research that, really know what their house looked like when it was first built, how to get it back to, that era, if you will, or that grand.
Restore the integrity of that
Restore the
house.
integrity, exactly.
There's no surefire way to find out.
Okay.
Some houses are better cataloged. The first place I might start was the Massachusetts Historical Society has a lot of we've had a very active historical commission.
Okay.
And our historic district commission that have inventoried a lot of our houses. In other words, volunteers have gone out and cataloged the house. They've researched the date, because we all know that when you go to City Hall, as a realtor you would know,
Yes.
how many things were built in 1900? They were not built in 1900. But that's when
a
they
lot of building going on in 1900.
But that's when they started to catalog it. So you use that as a date. But I
Yes.
walk in and go, this is a classic Queen Anne, 1880s house, or this is an Italianate from 1854, and you just know it, and you'll find addresses, back there. So if someone has found out the date,
Okay.
they took a picture at that time, and if they could find out at the time who the builder was,
Okay.
who lived there, what was the profession of the people who lived there, you can get some great
would be amazing.
information.
Yes.
So that's
The
one start.
history. Okay.
And the Heritage Room over at the library on the 3rd floor.
Okay.
Which you just, be nice to one of the librarians and they'll unlock it for you. They're great over there. But the research,
like attic space?
No, it's beautiful. There's
Is
a
it really?
reading room. There's
Okay.
meeting. It's a great meeting space. For anyone who doesn't know, you can ask to have a meeting. You just have to end by 9 when the library closes. But it's
Okay.
a great meeting space. But aside of the reading room is a catalog of all the census books throughout the entire history of Melrose.
Okay.
So you know who lived in your house,
Okay.
how many families lived in there. All these big Victorian houses, weren't built as multifamilies that we have now. We have
Yes.
almost 400 multifamilies that weren't built that way. That was World War II creating pressure on housing, and things got chopped up. You can see all of a sudden a lot of more houses live there, and then people have sometimes taken those 2 families away and restored the single family. There's also newspaper articles, pictures. When you start digging around, you can't get out of there. You can get lost in the heritage room, having fun, finding out things about your neighborhood, the old stores that were here. Anybody who's a history buff, I
love it.
highly recommend it
Yes.
as a field trip. It's fun.
Okay. All right, great. Good. That's good to know. I'm going to jump back a little bit. Now, in the beginning, you had talked about, these houses almost being like a museum, being treasures. And we talked a little bit about painting as far as maintenance is concerned. But what about, to me, when you look at these homes, the curb appeal and just the way they stand out
Right.
in a crowd, as far as, what about
If
the
they're
painting?
treated well.
If they're, exactly, if they're done right.
I remember Maureen Grant over, I think she's at the bottom of maybe 10 Warwick Road years ago, bought a house and it was gray.
Okay.
Gray everywhere. Gray.
Gray on gray.
Gray on gray. All
Okay.
the woodwork, the porch, everything was gray. And when she painted it, it came to life.
Okay.
That happens all the time. So it's about picking other colors, contrasting colors. Consult people at Melrose Paint. Roberta's down there. People
Sure.
can help you.
Sure.
There's books on this, but taking it from 1 to 2 colors, from 2 to 3, 3 to 4. You can do 6 and 7 houses on a house that has enough. It can get kind of candy if you're not careful.
Yes.
But if
Yes.
you get to San Francisco, I just came through a tour of the Painted Ladies and
must be
done
beautiful.
with
Yes.
gold leaf.
Oh.
Beautiful, beautiful things. But it's not just painting the trim work. There's a beautiful line along a window you can often bring out and pop. It's painting how you paint the doors, the porches. I've seen it done very well, and I've seen it very tacky.
Okay.
We won't name names.
No, don't. No names.
I think in true Victorian fashion, there tend to be more muddy colors. They didn't have the color choices.
Okay.
So the purists
Very
want,
earthy?
that's why you get mustard,
Okay.
brown, dark green, and mustard brown and dark green.
That's
why-
interesting, 'cause
That's
when
where
I-
those colors
okay.
come from. Those are
Okay.
the original colors.
Okay.
But what San Francisco has done, and they've done, they've brought all kinds of colors in. I think some colors work better in a warmer climate than
That's
others.
true, too. That's
but,
true, too.
You should have a little bit of fun, and all of a sudden when you see the windows. The other thing I'd love to talk about is
Yes.
asbestos.
Yes.
You remember
Yes.
in 1950s, it was pre-vinyl siding.
Yes.
And you'd never have to paint your house again. You could put that big, boxy asbestos. You could put it on
Yes.
everything. They
Yes.
even covered some of the trim.
And help with heating.
Asbestos removal has come down
Yes.
tremendously. The cost of it.
Oh, good.
It's practically half the price it was when I first got in the business.
Okay.
Meaning it was 10 to 12, like 4 or 5, and I know Eileen Handler just got a quote for under 3. So what's wonderful is if you choose to remove the asbestos, and you can look, anybody who wants to know what's under their house,
Yes.
under vinyl or asbestos, all you need to do is go look at the foundation. You can see clapboard.
Exactly.
You can see the cedar shingles.
Like
so
when
you
you
know
pull the
exactly
rug
how-
up a little bit so
and
you can
ready,
see if
it
it's
hasn't
hardwood.
been exposed to the elements,
Well,
to the
that's it.
sun.
It's protected.
It needed a paint job at the time.
Yes.
If there's been a leak in the asbestos, it might need a little wood repair. But I've seen, I want to call it Marie Wood's house. She's been gone a long time, but at the corner of up on East Emerson Street, she removed all the asbestos, and it's that big red, gorgeous Victorian. There's another one over on Upland Road, where Kiki Schneider at the time and the Victorian Society removed the asbestos and brought back this house. People didn't know how beautiful they
Yes,
were.
yes.
So that's something, if you're painting, is to also consider the siding or removing siding and bringing that back.
Okay. All right. Good. Asbestos always puts up red flags, as far as that goes. So I guess I'm thinking too, when it comes to a Victorian home, and we touched upon this a little bit, but like you mentioned, electricity. There was no electricity, so if people want to put in overhead lights,
Right.
or the plumbing that may need to be looked at, or what are some of the other considerations that people should be thinking about?
you know, you win a couple of things. You know, times change, and
Yes.
how we treat our homes has changed. You know, Victorian homes are famous for their knob and tube electrical,
Yes.
and we all know that that's toxic
Yes.
in
Yes.
real estate.
Yes.
Some insurers won't insure
Insure
it,
it.
or they're going to charge you a lot more to insure it. There are some local insurers who are really friendly towards that. You should call us, you know. But no, seriously, like we
Yes.
know the resources
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
But so dealing with knob and tube,
Okay.
dealing with asbestos on your pipes,
Okay.
dealing with asbestos on the basement floor,
Yes.
it's dealing with there are still original bathrooms in this town. I mean, I've seen the pull
Believe it or
chain,
not.
pull chain, you know, from above. You know, you can
Yes.
still find
Yes.
them. So
Yes.
we're clearing those out. But
Okay.
a lot of bathrooms were renovated in the 1920s here, so now they're only 100 years old. So, so in the
Okay.
older houses, you're going to have older plumbing. You know, certainly when people are renovating, I always recommend don't do what's hip and new so much as do what's timeless.
Yes.
The black and white
Yes.
bathrooms, you know, those
Yes.
kind of things. So you've got beautiful plaster. You've got this gorgeous medallion, and you want to drop a light through it. You're like, ouch.
I know.
You can't do it. You know,
Yes.
get a craftsman in.
Somebody
this
who
is not a
knows. Yes.
DIY.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
DIY kind of project. yeah.
Yes, exactly. Now, we talked a little bit too, because when you think about the buyers of today's market, you know, a lot of what people are looking for is that open concept, that entertaining concept. And although the Victorian, I find, has such beautiful little nooks and crannies and places to go and read and whatnot, maybe not so much the entertaining piece when it comes to kind of the kitchen. And
It doesn't.
And yes.
It was really, you know, it was wonderful. We didn't have to be all huddled around one central fireplace to
Yes.
stay warm.
Yes.
They were
Yes.
doing fireplaces throughout the house. Central heating was on the way. This was
Yes.
exciting.
Yes.
So we could move people apart. And now today, the fashion is, the trends are open floor plans. So in some of these Victorian houses, if you remember, we have so many different kinds. There are more modest, kind of working class Victorians.
Absolutely.
And some really grand dames, you know, in Melrose. So in those kind of exquisite dining rooms, you don't go knocking down the mahogany paneling and all of the
Yes.
carved woodwork to
Yes.
open it up to the kitchen.
Yes.
But in some of these working class Victorians that are really great, you know, knocking down the wall between the living room and dining room means just a floor repair and opening up the space. And you can showcase that. So it's case specific,
Okay.
and you can do, you know, you can bring a modern touch to a Victorian home done well. Of course, that leads to painting on the inside.
Yes.
Let's talk about
Yes, that was my next question. How you feel about that?
that. It's so funny. My folks had a house where the Spaldings up on Silwoods Road had spent over a decade doing nothing but peeling all of the paint off the woodwork
Okay.
in the hallways, etc. And it's still that way, but I suspect they'll just a matter of time before someone decides natural woodwork is so out of fashion. We're seeing more of that.
Yes.
People want to paint the woodwork
Yes,
now. Someone will put the
absolutely.
paint back on, only to have someone in 20 years take the paint back off. But right now, people want bright and light.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
painting it appropriately on the inside, try to, you know, maintain the mahogany and the beautiful oak that some of these Victorians have. Some of the woodwork isn't that great. You know, some of the working class Victorians are full of pine and fir.
that is very true.
It's beat up. You know, paint is the
Paint,
best thing
yes,
you can do for it.
absolutely.
It rejuvenates it. So, you know, case by case specific on that. And then, of course, which also leads us to the wallpaper discussion.
Yes.
The Victorian Society, I remember the huge push for Bradbury and Bradbury paper. I've actually been to the Bradbury and Bradbury factory in California, all hand printed, with, you know, with gold leaf. It's spectacular.
And expensive, I'm
And
sure.
tell me, you're in real estate. Does any buyer want it?
No, no, it's very taste specific.
Yeah,
and,
it
and they're not. Yes, it's all about kind of the Pottery Barn color and
Yeah. So, and that's where I've seen people make terrible mistakes. They have gorgeous oak woodwork and they paint the room blue.
Yes.
Remember, woodwork is warm, so that's where you should lend it towards golds, yellows, you know, warm greens, not mints, you know.
Yes.
If you have
Yes.
white woodwork, you can do anything you want.
Yes.
But I've seen people really go sideways on when they have natural woodwork and they want to do paint and they don't match. So
Yes.
enough about that.
Okay.
Talk to Roberta down at Melrose Paint. She won't let you make those mistakes. So.
I know. Well, I think, like you said, it is very cyclical.
Yeah.
You know, where people at one point wanted it, you know, the mahogany, like you said, the true mahogany, then they paint it, and then they strip it. And it's the same thing with wallpaper. You have your wallpaper, then you paint it, and
We
I'm
know the
sure we're
next
going
cycle.
back to wallpaper again.
Yeah.
You know, it just is. Some beautiful patterns are coming out, and it just will happen.
Right.
So it's just, like you said, it's just
The
it's a
next
cyclical-
Waverly will be.
That's exactly. That's exactly. Tell me, is there anything else, I mean, as far as from your point of view, that we should kind of let people know as far as Victorians are concerned? Do you feel like we covered kind of a nice...
We did. I would just say that, you know, be proud, Melrose, that
Absolutely.
we still are the Victorian city. You know, I always tease that anything built after World War II
Yes.
is new construction in
Yes,
Melrose.
and that is true.
Don't be afraid of them, you know, but you need the money to really maintain them.
Yes.
But it's a really important part of what makes Melrose. There's so many things that make Melrose special.
Yes.
But our architecture and sidewalks and walkability
Yes.
are all, we're actually still functioning almost the way the town was intended. People are greener now.
Yes.
People are going back to walking.
Again, the
Yeah.
whole...
When I grew up in Melrose, there were one-car families.
Yes.
And because
Yes.
at the time it was dad, it wasn't mom walking
Yes.
to the train, and now
Yes.
we're back to, I think, more one-car families.
Absolutely.
And this town lends itself to that, and that's what they were thinking when they built these beautiful houses around the train stations. So, you know, certainly I'd make myself available or point people to resources in this town, people who are still involved in the Victorian Society, to help people if people have questions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're
It was
welcome.
really a pleasure. I feel like I learned a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Hi, I'm Chris Cowher from Patriot Community Bank, and this week we're going to talk about some of the financing options and what's available for homes that are older. Generally in the mortgage industry, when you have a home that's, say, 75 years, 100 years or older, the same mortgage programs are available to them as any home that's new or just been built recently. So whether it be a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, one of the adjustable rate mortgages, whether it be a 3, 5, or 7-year, all of the same products are available. We really don't look at the age of the house as part of the equation as whether you qualify for the mortgage or not. A couple of things that we do look for, though, with homes in that category are when appraisal is done. Sometimes there's a little bit more difficulty in getting comparable size homes that are, you know, similar in size. You know, you may have a Victorian house that's 125 years old. And again, we don't necessarily have to count that to other 125-year-old Victorian homes, but we do need to comp it to homes that are similar size in similar conditions. So the appraiser has to do a little bit of extra work on those type of homes. But as far as financing goes, generally the same programs apply. There's no special conditions based upon the age of the home, whether the home is brand new or the home is 150 years old. Again, the same products apply. Interest rates right now are still very good. The fixed rates are right around 4 or high 3s. The adjustable rate mortgages, here we are, you know, going into the fall of 2014, are still historically low. The adjustables are in the low 3s and high 2s right now. I did want to mention something about insurance on some of these older homes. Now, as far as insurance goes, it's a little bit more difficult. There are many insurance companies will not insure a home that is 100 years old or more. They have a cutoff there, but there's plenty that do. So let's say you're looking at 20 different insurance companies. I would say 12 of them will still do homes that are 100 years old, but 8 of them might not. So you may have to shop a little bit more for home insurance on homes that are 100 years old or more. So check around on that and keep that in mind. Another thing to be concerned about is some of the older conditions of these homes. They may have tube and knob wiring. They may have some older plumbing and things like that. As far as the process goes, as long as it's functional and it still meets the code and it's okay with the town, generally the banks are okay with it and the insurance companies are okay with it. Many of them do want you to update those things, though, too, upon property transfer. So again, want to keep it in mind. Most people that buy a house like that and know that it needs updating, you know, they'll go ahead and do that. So as far as insurance goes and things like that, again, just might have to work a little bit harder to make sure you get a good insurance program and are aware of some of the renovations. Another thing to keep in mind is that many lenders do offer renovation loans. You know, Patriot Community Bank, for example, we do have a renovation program where we'll finance in the renovations of a home like that as part of the purchase price. Generally, during the construction phase or the renovation phase, we only bill you interest only on that until the house is fully done, and then it converts into a full-time permanent mortgage. So again, feel free to contact me if you want any more information or details on those programs, but they're kind of widely available so that, again, you know, as far as the age of the house goes, there's plenty of different options that you can have in financing and buying a home like that. So thanks a lot, appreciate it, and I'll see you next month.
Hi, Ron Rocha here. I'm here with Mike Coleman, Melrose resident and local architect. Today we're taking a walking tour of Victorian Homes. The tour comes from us from the Mirror. Bernadette Mahoney has put together a few good walking tours of homes and neighborhoods in Melrose. Mike and I are going to do the Victorian tour today, and we're going to start with this home right here behind us, which is a late Victorian home. Mike, what do you think?
Thanks, Ron. What I like about this house is it's been recently restored and painted in period-style colors, and a couple of the details that I think are really unique and interesting. I like the side entrance. I think that's really kind of cool, and the belt course where the shingle changes, the siding changes from shingles to clapboard siding. I think that's both unique details that you see in late Victorian-style homes.
Thank you, Mike. All right, we have a lot of homes to go, so let's go.
Great.
All right, Mike, we have a great example of Georgian style here. Is there anything you can tell me about it?
Yeah, so this house, Ron, one of my favorite features on this house is the front porch, which we believe is probably not original to the house, but it's a great wraparound porch, has a beautiful second-story deck, and I think it was a nice addition to the house. Again, this is built around 1900, and it's a Georgian-style colonial.
Thank you. Next house, let's go. All right, Mike, next we have a colonial revival incorporating neoclassical details. What do you think of this house?
Well, this is a great house. Everybody knows this house in Melrose. It's commonly referred to as the wedding cake house. I believe it was built around 1895. And what they mean by neoclassical details are it's just the level of detail, like the Corinthian columns really stick out to me. Other things I really like about this house is, I love the slate roofing and just the detailing in general. I think a few years ago this house was beautifully restored by the previous owners, and it really shows. They did a great job landscaping. Everything looks like it could have been as it was built 100 years ago, Ron.
Great. On to the next house. Go that way. All right, here we are, Mike. Another great house in Melrose, a colonial revival. What's the difference between this one and the last one we were just looking at?
Well, like we said with the wedding cake house, there's a lot of neoclassical detailing. This has some. You can see the two-story Corinthian columns, but a lot less details. It's a colonial revival, as you said, built in the 1880s, and it's a symmetrical style house, sort of simple elegance that they have. There's some detailing on this house that may not be original to the period. Those X's that you see, that you can't see around the corner, probably blocked by the trees. But again, it's got a large formal entrance, a large doorway in, which is pretty much evident of that period, and it's a great example of colonial revival, Ron.
Great, thanks. On to the next one.
There we go. Whenever you're ready.
All right, Mike, we have an example of the Italianate style here. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Sure. So this house, built in 1883, is a great example of Italianate. It's a simple elegance. It's symmetrical. A couple of things that identify as Italianate: the broad overhangs, the detail, of course, and the circle top windows. I really like this house, and I think they did a great job restoring it a few years back. The paint job is fantastic, and it's a beautifully maintained home.
Great, thanks. Ready to see the next house. All right, Mike, I'm going to let you handle this one. What style of house is this?
Okay, Ron, so this house looks to be another shingle-style Victorian, and what's exciting about this, as you can see, it's under restoration right now, so we're looking forward to what it's going to look like in a year or two when they finish. But again, you see a lot of shingle-style detailing, specifically on the turrets. You can see how it starts with clapboards, then it goes to a shingle belt course, and then back to clapboards. Great window detailing on this house. I like the turrets, and again, it's going to be really exciting to see how this one turns out.
Great. All right, Mike, last house on our whirlwind tour here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This is the Second Empire style. Mike, what's unique about this house?
Okay, so this house was built around 1890, and one of the identifying characteristics of Second Empire is the mansard roof, which is a little bit different. We haven't seen that in any other house on the tour today. Again, it's a symmetrical house, this one, but it can be asymmetrical in layout. Some of the other details that I like about it, you can see some cornice details. I like the curved top windows up in the mansard roof. And then you can see, if you look closely, there's a copper coping on the first floor porch roof. And all those details are really, I think, part and parcel to this style. And I think it's a really nice example of a second empire. Again, 1890.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for all your information today.
Sure.
Have a great day, everyone.
This concludes our show for today. Thank you again for joining us for the Faces of Melrose Real Estate. Please take a look at our Facebook page, and we are excited to announce the launch of our new website under fyi-re.com. Please take a look and add any comments or suggestions you may have. Please join us on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock, Saturday nights at 7 o'clock, and Wednesday mornings at 11. Thank you.